So glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. As you know, Jim Garrity is away, and here in his place once again, we're thrilled to have Scot Bertram. He is the general manager of WRFH, Radio Free Hillsdale, on the campus of Hillsdale College in Michigan, where he's also a lecturer in journalism. He is also the director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. He hosts the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, and he's the co-host of Wasn't That Special, 50 Years of Saturday Night Live. And as I like to mention, and slightly embarrass him, but it's true, he has one of the largest trophy cases anywhere in colleges, because he just keeps collecting the hardware because his students do excellent work, and I'm sure he has quite a bit to do with that. So, Scot, I'm sure your new school year is off to an excellent start.
It is, in fact. It's halfway through. Can you believe that? It's week 7. Fall break starts on Thursday for our students, so that means we are at the halfway point of the fall term already.
Yeah, that's crazy. Today is also, unfortunately, the 2-year anniversary of the heinous Hamas terrorist attacks in Israel. 2 years later, we're still trying to get hostages out, the living and the dead. We've got this peace plan on the table. Hamas keeps saying they want to do some of it, but not all of it. And basically, they're stalling and trying to change it, and ultimately unlikely to agree with it, or at least stick with it if they do agree with it. So I'm sure they regret it to some extent 2 years later, Scot, but the aftermath is still going on.
Yeah, I don't know how much they regret it. It was their plan, and they carried it out. And in their mind, I would imagine it was successful, right? I know the blowback has been awful for them, but it also affects a lot of people who aren't them in that region, of course. So, we talked about this last week when I filled in. How long will they try to stall, delay? Will there actually be an agreement to the agreement? Do they know where the hostages are? Clearly, it seems like no. Are they stalling because they don't want the hostages to come out looking like they've been starved for the past 18 months, 2 years? That's certainly a possibility as well. I know President Trump is somewhat celebratory about this. Still very much wait and see.
Yeah, a lot of missed deadlines in this whole fiasco with trying to bring an end to the war, but most importantly, bringing the hostages home. And just can't even imagine, first of all, what they've gone through, but also what their families have had to endure, trying not to imagine what their loved ones have gone through. And so let's just hope they're home soon. So, so much to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the latest with Jay Jones in Virginia, the same Republican delegate that he had the tech exchange with about fantasizing about killing the Republican leader and the Republican leader's child. Well, now he's allegedly said some things about police. He denies it, but that same delegate said they had a conversation about that on a phone call. We'll also take a look at revelations from the FBI that former special counsel Jack Smith had tapped the phones and was going through the records, at least, of 8 different U.S. senators in connection with his investigation into January 6th. But in a moment, we're going to be digging into ICE in Chicago. ICE in Portland has also been a big issue, but ICE in Chicago is where we'll be in just a moment. But if this news cycle has worn you out and wondered if your mind can take it, you're not alone. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, and this coming October 10th, which I guess is Friday, is World Mental Health Day. And maybe this is the time that you've decided that, whatever the issue is, personal, professional, it's time to take it to the therapist. Friends have been great. Friends have been supportive, but maybe they just can't get you where you need to go, and making some important decisions or figuring out what the road ahead ought to look like. And so BetterHelp has more than 12 years of experience in matching people to the right therapist. Yeah, BetterHelp does the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. A short questionnaire helps identify your needs and preferences. And their more than 10 years of experience and industry-leading match fulfillment rate means they typically get it right the first time. If you aren't happy with your match, switch to a different therapist at any time from their tailored recommendations. So this World Mental Health Day, we're celebrating the therapists who've helped millions of people take a step forward. And if you're ready to find the right therapist for you, BetterHelp can help you start that journey. Our listeners at 3 Martini Lunch get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/3ml. That's better, HELP.com/3ml. All right, Scott, let's move to ICE in Chicago. And as many of our listeners know, Scott is a Chicago native, or at least a Chicago area native. And so ICE has, of course, been running operations in cities and elsewhere ever since President Trump took office back in January. And, of course, the blue state governors love to play resistance hero. We saw it with Gavin Newsom out in California. Now we're seeing it with J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. And so we've got a couple of instances now as it relates to the Chicago PD as activists. You can read that as Antifa. You can read that as just people trying to cause mayhem with ICE as they conduct their operations, getting in their way. There's been a hit and run. There's been an effort by 10 different vehicles to box in ICE agents in the Chicago area. And Scott and I were actually comparing notes about which police dispatch audio that we're going to play in a moment, because both of them are basically telling Chicago PD to stand down as it relates to ICE agents in distress and potentially in danger. And so, in terms of the one where they were boxed in by 10 cars, Assistant DHS Secretary Tricia McLaughlin says agents were unable to move their vehicles and exited the car. One of the drivers who rammed the law enforcement vehicle was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. Law enforcement was forced to deploy their weapons and fire defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself to the hospital to get care for wounds. Now, if you look at the media, it's just woman shot in ICE confrontation, but she was the one that rammed the vehicles and had the gun in her hand and so forth. And so when it comes to, first of all, the reaction to that, thumbs up to Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling. He's telling people, you know what? You may not like ICE, but what they're doing is legal, and if you get in their way, don't come crying to me.
ICE, HSI are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger.
And so stand up and cheer for Superintendent Snelling on that one, but he's not exactly coming through smelling like roses in other ways in this whole ordeal, Scott, because he has also insisted that there was never a stand-down order for Chicago PD when it came to assisting ICE agents who were being attacked. And when it comes to that box-in situation, here's what the dispatch sounded like.
All right, at 999, just to confirm, at 39th Place in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending, waving off all the cars heading to 39th Place in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
Okay, 10-4. And again, for all the units that we called to go over that way, 39th Place in Kedzie, if you could just hold off 911, 913. 923, 924, 933, 934. Just disregard that. 39th Place in Kedzie.
Disregard, don't go there. Didn't use the exact word stand down, Scott, but that's a stand down order.
There's a lot to unpack here. You can hear how excited apparently the officer was, whoever was talking to the dispatch. Those are the orders we were given. So my understanding is the way that that Chicago police are explaining this is that particular audio we heard is not from the immediate aftermath of the box-in incident with the shooting. It's maybe an hour or 90 minutes later, as the dispatcher said. Then the reporters were being surrounded. There's lots of people around here. We need help. That's when this order came down, and a clear order, as you heard, to not respond. And you can hear her at the end calling back all these cars, these patrol units that were dispatched to the area. Snelling was pretty forceful yesterday that they weren't going to do that. They were going to be there to help and to assist where needed. So I guess we'll see how that plays in the future. But as of now, they weren't there in that particular situation, and the audio says as much. It's interesting to hear the chief of police of Chicago telling Chicago residents not to box in cars. not to create dangerous situations. Because over the weekend, we heard Governor J.B. Pritzker, we heard Senator Tammy Duckworth essentially say those things weren't happening on the ground, that protesters weren't doing those things. And the chief is saying they are doing those things, and you shouldn't do it because you're creating a dangerous situation. You know what's happening to these officers, these ICE agents, as they travel around the city of Chicago? They are being followed. They are being pursued by multiple vehicles, 10 vehicles, dozen vehicles, more than that number of vehicles. And those cars are disobeying traffic laws, running red lights, running stop signs, driving in the wrong lane, driving the wrong way down one-way streets. You can see some of this video that's been posted online where it's like a funeral procession, meaning they're not paying attention to any traffic laws whatsoever as they follow the ICE agents, honking horns, yelling, screaming, making a nuisance of themselves, and in their mind, making people aware that the ICE agents are nearby. So that's happening on the ground too. There's a very dangerous situation, and Governor Pritzker wants everyone to believe it's because of the ICE agents. If you just wouldn't be here, we'd all cool out. Your presence is your mere presence is violence in the city, and he didn't say that, but he did call them jackboots, Gestapo, carrying out the autocratic tendencies of the Trump administration. All this rhetoric. People listen, people believe, and then they act. If you're calling the ICE agents jackboots and Gestapo, residents are going to say, we can help. We can follow them. We can make sure we see what they're doing. Pritzker actually said this. He said, take out your phones and make sure you video everything they do. And so people heard him, and they're following agents, and they're trying to get in their way, and they're trying to stop them from carrying out their lawful actions. So yes, it's a dangerous situation created on the ground in Chicago, but it's not due to the ICE agents being there. It's because Governor Pritzker is encouraging people to act in this manner.
That's exactly right. And when it comes to this fight, it's funny, not in a humorous way, but just a bizarre way, that the Democrats and these blue state governors all of a sudden turn into federalists where, oh, no, this is our state and local issue. Look, we tried to make that argument in Arizona. We tried to make that argument in Texas. And the Supreme Court has said time and time and time again, no, states, localities, you do not have jurisdiction over immigration. That is a federal government purview, and even if they're not doing a good job, it's their job to do one way or another. And so this is the federal government's job to go in here, find people who are here illegally, in many cases criminals, take them into custody, and then possibly deport them. And so the idea that we're standing up to federal government intrusion just doesn't pass the smell test.
And Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, being his usual foolish self yesterday, signing something about ICE-free zones across the city of Chicago. I'm not sure what he intends to do about it. Like, oh, you trespass and we're going to arrest the ICE agent, citizens arrest. What's going to happen? But he also, of course, trotted out the line yesterday, no one is above the law, referring to, I guess, the ICE agents, and at the same time just simply deeming an entire subset of the population above the law. People, right. The ICE agents are there to try to find, arrest, and potentially deport people who have broken the law. Those people are above the law. It's everyone else that Brandon Johnson says is, I guess, below the law. No, is it? Yeah, I was right. Below the law.
No, that's
spatial issues. Sorry.
Yeah, and they think they're satisfying their base here, and maybe some section of the base is being fired up. But we saw the poll numbers. We've seen the poll numbers since well before the election day, and Trump is getting fantastic poll numbers on immigration, even if his overall poll numbers aren't that great. People like order at the border, and they like criminal illegals being rounded up. And so the Democrats can make a big stink about this. I don't think it's going to help them. The question is whether ICE agents are going to be protected or not. And apparently in blue states, they're perfectly happy to let crazy people threaten them, and who knows what will happen next. Thankfully, none have been killed yet. But given what we've seen over the last few days, I wouldn't assume that that's always going to be the case.
Well, none of them have been, but immigrants have been killed, right?
Texas,
in Texas.
Yeah. Yep.
And we have National Guard troops from Texas that are now on the move to deploy in Chicago to help keep the ICE agents safe. A judge yesterday did not intervene in that. So at least as of this recording here, it appears that those National Guard troops will be on the ground in Chicago sometime very soon. And then we'll see J.B. Pritzker out and escalating the situation yet again.
Yeah. Unbelievable. predictable, but still very, very disappointing. And Chicago PD, I don't know what semantics you're using here, but protect the ICE agents. That's your job when they're in your jurisdiction. So
it's to keep everyone safe. The job is it's to keep everybody safe. It's to keep the protesters safe. It's to keep the agents safe, right? I mean, the police are there to preserve. I was going to do a Mayor Daley there when he said police aren't there to create disorder; they're there to preserve disorder. No, the police are there to preserve order and safety, whether that is for the ICE agents are there, or for the pedestrians, or for people on the road who are being cut off by these people who are tracking ICE agents around the city.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. All right, let's talk about more preservation, not only preserving law and order. How about preserving the health and youthful look of your skin? That's where OneSkin can come in and do a lot of good work in making sure that you age gracefully and that you look good as you age. OneSkin has a lot of fantastic products. Mrs. Columbus has talked about how she's glad that it's not a greasy type of thing. It's very light. It absorbs into the skin very well. I really like the sunscreen aspect of OneSkin. Protects you from sunburn, but it also, helps to keep longevity with your skin. You've certainly seen people who spend too much time in the sun when they're older, and their skin has definitely paid a price for that. But when it comes to OneSkin, they're known for their favorites like OS1 Body, OS1 Face, OS1 Eye. OneSkin stands out for their science-first approach to skin aging, delivering hydration, barrier support, and powerful longevity benefits in every product. And OneSkin is changing how we age by focusing on skin and scalp health at the cellular level. Powered by their patented OS1 peptide, every formula is designed to keep skin healthier, stronger, and more resilient over time. Now, for a limited time, try OneSkin with 15% off using the code 3ML at oneskin.co. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with the code 3ML. And after you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them, so please support the 3 Martini Lunch and tell them that we sent you. All right, Scott, moving on to our second martini now. And this news broke late yesterday afternoon, maybe early evening. Fox News version of the story. Former special counsel Jack Smith was allegedly tracking the private communications and phone calls of nearly a dozen Republican senators as part of his investigation into the January 6, 2021 Capitol riots. A document reviewed by Fox Digital revealed that Smith and his Arctic Frost team investigating January 6th were allegedly tracking the phone calls of GOP Senators Lindsey Graham, Marsha Blackburn, Ron Johnson, Josh Hawley, Cynthia Lummis, Bill Hagerty, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, and Republican Congressman Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania. And so this was a document recently discovered by FBI Director Kash Patel and exclusively obtained by Fox, is titled Cast Assistance and dated September 27, 2023. CAST refers to the FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey Team. And so basically they were looking at all these records about where phone calls were, where people were when they made the calls, where the people were where they received those calls, and so forth. And so the document states the names of the lawmakers, and then an FBI special agent on Smith's team conducted preliminary toll analysis on the toll records associated with the lawmakers. And so Arctic Frost was opened inside the Bureau in April of 22, and Jack Smith was appointed special counsel in November 2022. So Dan Bongino, the deputy FBI director, briefed lawmakers up on Capitol Hill. He says, "It's a disgrace that I have to stand on Capitol Hill and reveal this, that the FBI was once weaponized to track the private communications of U.S. lawmakers for political purposes. That era is over." And so, Scott, again, we always play this game, but if this had happened in the opposite direction, if Trump's FBI or Justice Department had been doing surveillance on prominent Democratic lawmakers, I think the reaction in the press would be a whole lot more intense than it is right now. What do you make of this?
It's troubling. Chuck Grassley, I think, yesterday said, "What worse than Watergate?" That's even 50 years after the fact, it's still sort of the water line, no pun intended, for how bad a scandal is. Is it worse than Watergate? Is it not as bad as Watergate? But tracking, spying, this has been a hallmark of recent Democratic administrations, right? We find this out about Jack Smith and under the Biden administration investigation. The Obama administration was very fond of spying on reporters, James Rosen, Cheryl Atkinson. Remember that there was a scandal about spying on German officials during his presidency as well after the fact. And this is a phrase that I keep coming back to in many instances these days. If there's no punishment, if there's no investigation, if there's no if there's no effect, then you're simply going to get more of it. I mean, people will take as much rope as you wish to give them when it comes to investigations, when it comes to the ability to spy on American citizens, when it comes to the ability to spy on U.S. senators, find out, as you laid out, who they're calling, when they're calling, where they are when they're making those calls. Was it important to the investigation? It certainly doesn't seem that way based on what we know thus far. And it certainly is. This is also a very easy case to explain to the American people if it becomes something larger, right? The presidents and the FBI were looking at U.S. senators, their communication, who they're talking to. They could have been talking to you. They could have been talking to a constituent. And the FBI is looking into those phone records, trying to put pieces together. So it's a very easy story to explain to people who might be suspect of these kind of activities.
Yeah, it's just probably going to get buried by the mainstream media. But the nice thing about Republicans being in control of the Senate, probably more specifically in this case, but possibly on the House side as well, is that they control the committee hearings.
Yes.
And they can subpoena people and they can get records and we can dig into this. So even though the media will probably try to ignore it because they have no interest in seeing exactly what dastardly deeds the Biden administration and Jack Smith were up to, we can at least get answers. And hopefully that'll happen soon.
And Lindsey Graham being on the list probably assures that that's the case, since he is so active on the Judiciary Committee, knows the ins and outs of a lot of these investigations. I don't think Lindsey Graham's going to be all that happy that he was among those being tracked and traced by the FBI.
No, I think that's exactly right. And Chuck Grassley, by the way, seems to be everywhere on every major story.
94. What, isn't he? It's like 90.
92. He's 92.
92. Okay.
Just turned 92. But, man, that guy's got more energy than people half of his age. So usually Jim and I are like, okay, you're hitting your 80s, certainly your mid-80s. Time to hang it up. Chuck Grassley just keeps getting better.
Yeah. My colleague Mark Moyer, who worked for U.S. Aid for a while in the U.S. government, he's got a great book about his experience and the terrible experience he had there. But he speaks so highly of Chuck Grassley because when he was desperate for someone to listen to his whistleblower claims of misconduct inside USA, Chuck Grassley was the one who came and helped and really pushed those cases forward. So, another feather in his hat, I suppose.
Yeah. Chuck Grassley's not marking time. He's actually really hard at work on a lot of different stuff. So he's kind of the exception to our senior citizen rule when it comes to serving in the U.S. Congress. So we'll see what happens from this. But just another example. You mentioned so many examples from the Obama administration. I think Obama's CIA even was spying on senators there for a while. Dianne Feinstein, I remember getting mad about that. So we'll see how much we get in the way of answers. And now that we've got more cooperative people at the FBI, hopefully that won't take too much time. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about your health. And did you know that more than 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver? It's a problem that often goes undetected until the very last minute. But Dose is on a mission to educate all of us on why it's important to maintain your liver health, and Dose has created an incredible product to help you do just that. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter. The science-backed formula promotes liver function, aids digestion, eases bloating, and even boosts energy levels. In a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial, Dose for Your Liver lowered liver enzyme levels by 50% for more than 86% of participants. So support your health with Dose Daily. Save 25% on your first month when you subscribe at dosedaily.co/3ml or enter the code 3ml at checkout. Please note the 25% discount applies only to subscription orders, not one-time purchases. Cancel any time with no hassle. That's dosedaily.co/3ml to get 25% off your first monthly subscription with the code 3ml. All right, Scott, on to our final martini and a follow-up to yesterday's first martini, which was all about Jay Jones, the Democratic nominee for Attorney General in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where I live. According to the most recent polls, which I don't think take into consideration the events of the last few days, he's got a middle single-digit lead. I think it was 6 points in the latest poll from Christopher Newport. But obviously that could all change the next time somebody takes a survey. First, of course, there was the case where he's driving 116 miles an hour in a 70-mile-an-hour zone, reckless driving. Instead of going to jail like every normal citizen, he gets 1,000 hours of community service or something, and at least half of that was spent doing community service for his own political action committee, i.e. campaigning. So rough sentence there. The bigger story, of course, is this text exchange he had with Republican delegate Kerry Coyner back in 2022, where then Republican House Speaker of the House of Delegates Todd Gilbert had said something nice about a Democrat that died, and somehow that launched Jay Jones into this diatribe about wanting to put 2 bullets into the head of Todd Gilbert, and that even his family should suffer. Maybe his wife needs to hold a dead child, and that will finally get Todd Gilbert to change his mind on different policies. He also said that Gilbert and his wife were raising little fascists and that they were evil. And so since the evidence was right there in front of him, he couldn't deny it. He said he's sick to his stomach the second time. The first time, he said it was just politics by Trump and Jason Miyares, the current attorney general.
Oh, and the Trump-controlled National Review, you know.
Yes, which shows how little he knows about a lot of things. Yes, exactly. But Kerry Coyner is not done. She is now talking about a 2020 phone conversation that she had with Jay Jones about qualified immunity for police officers. And I assume this is in the wake of the whole George Floyd situation and unrest, to put it mildly, across the country. She says, we had a pretty heated conversation about public policy and pain involving qualified immunity. I served on the courts committee for a short period of time, a bill to remove qualified immunity for police officers, which protects police officers from personal liability in their line of duty and their line of work. And he, meaning Jay Jones, believed that they should not have qualified immunity, and he was trying to convince me to agree to that. And I said, no, police officers have to make a split-second decision about whether or not to shoot a gun to protect themselves or others. And if they're having to think about it, will this strip my whole family of everything? Are they going to be able to make that split-second decision? And he said, I believe that people will get killed. Police officers will get killed. And he said, well, maybe if a few of them died, that they would move on, not shooting people, not killing people. I said that's insane, but he firmly believed that if you remove qualified immunity, that police officers would act differently. And I firmly believe that it would not result in good public policy. On and on it goes. Now, this is a phone call, so we don't have these specific receipts. And as a result, Jay Jones, in a statement yesterday, says, I did not say this. I have never believed and do not believe that any harm should come to law enforcement, period. Every single day, officers put their lives on the line. So we don't have specific confirmation of this, Scott. But for the guy that said, some people might need to die for people to change their minds on policy, this doesn't seem like a huge stretch.
Right. That's his problem now, is it's completely consistent with his worldview. It's completely consistent with his theory of political action, which is violence gives us better results. Violence can get my opponent to change his mind. A death of a loved one can get you to perhaps change the way you think about the political process. That is what moves people. Violence. And so this is totally consistent with that theory of political action for Jay Jones. And so I think it was Senator Warner yesterday who was doubling down on his endorsement of Jay Jones. And in his explanation, he says, I've known him for 25 years, and this is totally inconsistent with the guy. And I'm thinking, boy, man, one time you call for a mom to carry a child dying in her arms, and that has to change the way you think about someone. Well, not Mark Warner. Mark Warner says, you know what? That seems all right. It's just one time. It's just one time in 25 years. We can look past that sort of thing. Democrats have come to his defense. Democrats have come to his aid, which shouldn't be a surprise, I suppose. You know this better than I, Greg, but it's too late to swap out candidates at this point, is my understanding.
Early voting started over 2 weeks ago. So.
Which is another reason early voting is stupid and should not. 45 days is ridiculous. But that's a different conversation for a different 3 Martini Lunch. If Jay Jones had come out and said, I think girls' sports should just be for girls. If Jay Jones had come out and said, you know what, girls' locker rooms, just girls. If Jay Jones had come out and said, you know what, I think it's a little bit crazy that 10-year-olds, we want 10-year-olds to self-diagnose themselves as being transgender and then undergo hormone treatment. If he had said any of those things, he'd be dropped like yesterday's garbage
right.
by the Democratic Party, because there are certain things that are allowed. Violent rhetoric, wishing death upon a colleague, saying you'd shoot him twice. Certain things are not allowed, like saying that women can be, certain things are not allowed, like saying that women are women and that men are men. That would not be allowed in Virginia or the current Democratic Party. The candidate would not receive the same support that Jay Jones is receiving right now if he said those things. So it's the type of offense. And, you know, the Associated Press, I think Brent Scher had this today, has two stories about Jay Jones. And the headlines for those two stories, one is Jones apologizes, and the second one is Republican seize on Jones' texts. So if you are only reading the Associated Press for your coverage of the Jay Jones story, you think he's very sorry for what he's done, and Republicans are already trying to take advantage of this very sorry guy. Which, by the way, the apology was great. I don't know if he played it yesterday, but he never said, I'm sorry I did this. He said, I'm sorry this happened. Like passive voice to the extreme. It's just terrible. This thing happened that I texted and then called and then doubled down and said, yes, I think people should die and a child should die because it could push my opponent to change his beliefs. Yeah, just that thing that happened, he wishes wouldn't have happened, but no personal responsibility about it.
Yeah, those words made me sick to my stomach. Yeah, well, who said them? It's just crazy. Be curious to see how this plays out. At this point, with the Democrats rallying, I assume he stays in the race. Like we said, he can't get off the ballot at this point. Interesting tactic by Republicans. I think they're right on principle to want him to withdraw from the race. He's clearly unfit for the office. In terms of winning the race, I don't know if the Democrats would say, well, we'll put this person in if he ends up winning, but he's clearly unfit for office. I think keeping him right at where he is on the ballot might be the easiest way to win this race.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, you can't do that. You can't say he's clearly unfit. We're going to replace him, so you should vote for him. I think that's a losing message. I'm not a political operative, but I think that's probably not going to be the best strategy.
Probably not. Just reminds me of the Missouri Senate race in 2000 when Mel Carnahan died in a plane crash, and people are like, well, vote for him anyway, and then we'll have somebody else appointed to fill the seat. So, but we'll see what happens next. President Trump has weighed in. He has fully endorsed the current Attorney General, and we'll see where it goes from here. Scott, this was fun. Let's do it again tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good, sir.
Scot Bertram is the general manager of WRFH, Radio Free Hillsdale, on the campus of Hillsdale College in Michigan, where he's also a lecturer in journalism. He's also the director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network and the host of the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour. He's also the host of Wasn't That Special? 50 Years of Saturday Night Live. I'm Greg Corombos. Have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us all on X. Scott is at Scot Bertram with just one T in Scott. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a great Tuesday and join us again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.